related to drunk driving.
Wow. Here we are. Parshas Matos Maseh has in Matos the story of the children of Gad, the children of Reuven, Bnei Gad, and they had a lot of cattle. Mikneh. Now, Mikneh, the word Mikneh literally means acquisition. In the Bible, in Torah, that's often used to mean livestock. So they had a lot of livestock because that's what it meant to be wealthy. I mean, what it meant is to have a ton of, with all these heads of cow. And so Mikneh Rav Hayilivnei Reuven Ulivnei Gad. The children. This first pasuk talks about the children of Reuven in order, and then Gad. Otzum me'od. I mean, it was an enormous amount of wealth that they had in livestock. They were good at animal husbandry, I guess. Vayiru es. So they saw the land of Yazer, the land of Gilad, which is on the other side of the Jordan. And they're still wandering around, right? They just don't make it into the land of Israel in the 5 books of Moshe. So, but this is happening. This is a live story here. They came to Moshe, but it doesn't say, and it was a great place for livestock. They saw this is the perfect land. They can have a lot of space here. It's just outside of Israel. We've conquered the land. Vayavo b'nei Gad u'bnei Reuven. The order is reversed. The children of Gad and the children of Reuven. Reuven is the oldest tribe. Gad is further way down the list. He's the oldest of Zilpah, but not the oldest of the tribes. Vayomru el Moshe. And they said to Moshe and Elazar HaKohen and to the leaders, they said, Ataros, Divon, Yazer, Nimrah, Cheshbon, El Ale, Savam, Nevo, and Ve'on. So they named all these places. The land that Hashem smote before the Jewish people is a land for livestock. And your servants have livestock. So this must be where we're supposed to be. I mean, we have this gift from Hashem. We have these things, so we should be in this place. If we have found favor in your eyes, let the land be given to your servants as a heritage. Do not bring us across the Jordan. That's what they asked. Moshe said to the children of Gad and the children of Reuven, are your brothers going to go out to battle while you settle here? Why would you dissuade the heart of the Jewish Israel from crossing the land that Hashem has given them? That's what your fathers did when they sent them. The story of the spies. They went up to the valley of Eshcol. They saw the land, and they dissuaded the heart of the children of Israel not to come into the land that Hashem has given them. Hashem was very angry on that day, and he swore that they're not going to make it in. Okay. Then he makes a deal with them. He gets very upset. Moshe gives him a very, very hard time. He says, you have risen up in place of your fathers, a society of sinful people, to add more to the burning wrath of Hashem against Israel. How dare you ask for land outside the land of Israel? The Meraglim disdained the land of Israel, and that was a bad move. And you know what happened? We wandered around here 40 years, and everybody has to be killed. And now, this is not good. You could destroy the whole nation. So they came back, and they said, pens for the flock shall we build here for our livestock. We'll make cities for our small children. We'll arm ourselves swiftly in the vanguard of the children of Israel until we have brought them into their place. And our children will dwell in the fortified cities before the inhabitants of the land. We shall not return to our homes until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. So they said, we're not bowing out of our responsibility to the nation. We will go to war. We will fight with everybody else. We'll be in the front. We shall not inherit with them across the Jordan. We just want to live on the east bank of the Jordan. Moshe said to them, if you do these things, if you arm themselves before Hashem in the battle, and every armed man among you will cross the Jordan before Hashem, until Hashem drives out his enemies before them, then the land shall be conquered before Hashem, and you'll return, and you'll be free of your oath. You'll have finished your responsibility. But if you don't do it, you'll have sinned against Hashem. Okay. So far, who's getting this land? The tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuven, in that order. That's what we're talking about now. Okay, then it says one more interesting thing. The children of Machir, son of Menashe, went to Gilad and captured it, drove it at Amori. Moshe gave we wind up with half the tribe of Menashe also. So everyone who's outside the land of Israel is Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Menashe. Moshe arranged that the half the tribe of Menashe, who would wind up living along with these, now they didn't have a lot of livestock, and they weren't told to go there. They didn't ask to go. They were told by Moshe to go there. So the Netziv in the Hamek Davar, the Netziv is Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He was the Rosh Yeshiva in Slobodka. You know the name. His son Meir Berlin renamed himself Meir Bar Ilan, and that's where that name comes from in Israeli politics, the university. That's the. But he was the son of a great Rosh Yeshiva. So the Netziv in his commentary on Chumash. So let me see what it says here in Sefer Devarim in chapter 3. He has a famous commentary here, and he points out that from the tribe of Menashe, there are multiple sources that teach that from the tribe of Menashe, specifically the family of Machir, they were tremendous Torah scholars. So he says this. He says, Bishvil Shara Moshe Rabbeinu, Debe'ever Hayarden Koach HaTorah Ma'at. Moshe Rabbeinu understood that there is a special power. It sounds like there's a special power in the land of Israel for Torah learning, and that in Aver Hayarden, on the other side of the Jordan, even stepping foot out of Israel, it's less. It's interesting how by the way, in cultures, like different cities and places really do have characters, and there's certain cities that are just prone to, people talk about like San Francisco, right? Different places that like there's a culture, and you go into any bookshop in the city and people are talking about the same things. And so this is a thing that we find this in other places. We once learned about Ashkelon being a city of rational thought. And there are like different characters of different places in the world that are ready for certain ideas and certain attitudes. I wonder, even somebody was telling me recently that they've lived in different places, and they said that when people are in the plains and everything's flat, and they wind up looking up a lot because that's where this horizon immediately takes you. But when you're in a big city, you get focused. And they said that they really think that that's why certain kinds of artists and people, the landscape itself has some kind of impact on their mind, and that I have no idea how true it is or not. What I do know is that every one of the Shvatim got a certain part of the land of Israel, and the topography of everything about it relates to the character of that tribe and their customs and their behaviors. So Aver Hayarden is a place where it's hard to have Torah. It's hard to have Torah. That's one thing. He said, Hishtadel lehashtil b'kirbam gedolei Torah. He said, this is a dark place. We're going to see more about why it would be dark and why Reuven and Gad were attracted to want to move to this place. But therefore, he wanted to plant deliberately among them great people of Torah that would be a light in the darkness for them. And he says, so he brings a pasuk that from the children of Machir, the son of Menashe, came many lawgivers. It means Gedolei Torah, Rashi Yeshivas, like it says in Sanhedrin, that a mechokek is a lawgiver who teaches Torah in public. He quotes that from the Gemara, and that's the word that's used for the children of Machir. So Moshe Rabbeinu deliberately wanted the children of Menashe to have an influence there, because Torah was necessary to be together with the children of God and the children of Reuven. We still don't know exactly what happened with them, so we're going to learn about that. One more thing. They didn't love the land of Israel enough, it sounds like. Well, in last week's Parsha, the daughters of Tzilafchad, asked, they were from the tribe of Menashe, and they requested land in Israel. And Rashi says something. Rashi tells us, Rashi tells us that they came from Yosef, and Yosef showed tremendous love for the land. Yosef insisted that he be buried there, and Yosef read. And so from this, the people from the tribe of Menashe, going back already to the daughters of Tzilafchad, represented a group of people that had tremendous love for the land of Israel. And there's a discussion also about these girls because they showed their love for the land of Israel. Um, it was their father died, and they didn't care about anything in his estate. But when we get to the land of Israel, where's going to be our portion? So that's what they cared about. It was totally not about their money. It was the one thing they cared about in the whole estate was eventually when our family gets to Israel, are they going to have a portion in this holy land? And so that was the daughters of Salafcha, a very beautiful thing. So since this is a tribe that has shown their love for the land of Israel, so they're the ones who are going to live in Chutzlar, in Ever Hayarden, along with Reuven and Gad, who maybe didn't have enough love for the land of Israel. And they're going to connect to that. It's very important, those of us who don't have the privilege of living in the land of Israel, to know this following teaching from the Sefer HaChaim. Sefer HaChaim is the brother of the Maharal Miprag. And this is, so this is an ancient Sefer. Reb Chaim ben Betzalel of Friedberg. And so he said the following. He said that the Gemara says that a person who lives in outside of the land of Israel, Gemara says, Kol Hador bechutz la'aretz, is similar to a person that has no God. It's like he's an idol worshiper. I mean, it's a very bad thing to live in chutz la'aretz. Kol mi shadar bechutz la'aretz nasa kemi she'ein lo elokim u'ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. If you live outside the land of Israel, it's as if you have no God and you're an idol worshiper. L'chaim. Right? What are we doing? So listen what he says. Listen carefully. Lo amru zeh. They did not say this about everyone. Rak, only. Al ha'osek kvios diraso b'chutz la'aretz u'mis'arif imahem. They only said it about a person who makes his main life about being in chutz la'aretz and mixing in among the nations. That's what it means, hadar, a person who makes his life. His entire intention is that's where he will live forever, eternally. V'sham take for us, so he wants to be buried there. He's a real patriot of whatever country he's in. Ki iva yeshivas chutz la'aretz l'moshe. He yearns to live in this place. Shezehu vaday k'mo kfira be'elokei ha'aretz. That is a denial of God. Aval, but hamitzapet tamid liyeshuas hageula, person who is always waiting and anticipating the salvation of the Jewish people by Hashem sending Mashiach. Can you imagine when suddenly everyone in the world will realize that the comments they've been making on social media are way off, right? And all those bots will just stop doing that, right? And Chalila, God forbid that somebody who yearns tremendously for Mashiach and they wish they could be in the land of Israel under the right circumstances. Adarabba, Mala Olav Akosov, the Torah considers a person standing outside of Israel who wishes he could be there. Ke'iludar ve'amad b'sochel. It is considered as if he lives and is standing there. He says, Kenyan sha'anu machzirim pneinu lamizrach eretz Yisrael b'shas haTefillah. Jewish people, not only have we been indigenous in the past, we never left, because every time we've prayed and faced the land of Israel, and we direct our hearts toward Yerushalayim, it is considered in the eyes of God as if we're there. So there has never been a day when the entire Jewish people, at least everybody who davens, was not standing in Yerushalayim. They pulled our bodies out of there, but we long for that. This is all we want, is to be. Now, what stops you from being there then? Just go. Well, the answer is it's not so simple. If somebody needed surgery, right, they would come from Israel to Seder Sinai. So similarly, if the things in your life that are important and that Hashem is telling you to do need to be taken care of somewhere else, then that's where you have to go. But imagine how these people from the tribe of Machir, right, the Chatzi Shevet Menashe, who their tribe excels in their feelings of love for the land of Israel. And Moshe says, I got an important job for you. You're just going to be right on the other side, right? Just outside of Israel. Can you imagine? And the answer is, they were there. They yearned for it. They wanted it. They were there. The Jewish people denied Hashem's request for them to go into the land of Israel. But they spent 40 years yearning for it and wishing they could go in. And so, I mean, they were there. If that's where your heart is, if that's where your soul is, so then he says, This is why Yerushalayim is never mentioned in the entire Chumash. You ever thought about that? The word isn't in there. You have Melchizedek, the king of Salem, Shalem, avenge. That is the place, and we have a lot of stories where, right, the Mount Moriah, where, right, this is where Akedas Yitzchak happened. You have all different things, but it doesn't say anywhere the name Yerushalayim. It just says El Hamakom Asher Hashem, the place that Hashem will choose. He says, because you got to remember, Kol Makom Muktar Umagos Tushma, any place in the world can be the place Hashem chose. Not saying that Yerushalayim is not important. You have access to connecting to that place wherever you are at any time. And therefore, it's very, very important that those of us who, for whatever reason, and it's also nobody's business. You understand? It's nobody's business to know exactly why somebody's living in one place or another. Everybody has, right? But a person who is standing right now and is a Jew should always be thinking, Mitzapet Tamid, always thinking, this is our one true home in the world. This is where we really belong. What are we doing tomorrow? How are we doing it? Why are we, right? But to yearn for this, so the people from the tribe of Menashe, perhaps they were put together with Reuven and Gad, who were, Moshe says, were dangerously close to the Meraglim. But Moshe was given an opportunity to give them a solution. And every third neighbor they were going to have, every other person they were going to have was going to be from the tribe of Menashe, who can't stop talking about how much they love Eretz Yisrael and how connected they are to Eretz Yisrael. And that would allow us to annex on this land of Ever HaYarden as part of Eretz Yisrael, making that the center and the focus. And this is a very, very important thing. You know, a lot of times the Jewish community makes the mistake, people make the mistake of thinking that the attitude a person does or doesn't have towards Zionism and the contemporary state of Israel and certain political attitudes should have some relationship to their feelings about Eretz Yisrael. And that is a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. They can be two separate things. Obviously, for the religious Zionist, it's very intertwined, and that's beautiful, and I'm all for it, right? But for the person who, for whatever reason, doesn't have the same Zionistic perspective on the state of Israel and doesn't find the national anthem that doesn't mention God at all to be all that appealing to them, and they're not, like they don't, some of those things they're not, so, but to not be constantly talking about Eretz Yisrael and Mashiach and the Beis HaMikdash is a terrible mistake. In other words, this is not something that if you're a Zionist, you should talk more about Israel, and if you're a Satmar Chassid, you should talk less about Israel. The Satmar Chassid, who has his own Masorah about how to deal with current events, nevertheless would love every stone in the land of Israel as much as the most ardent Zionist. If any Jew doesn't have those feelings, doesn't pass it along at all to their family, doesn't have any pictures in their home, and nothing about it, so something's off. Something's off. We're missing something. This is a whole part of Torah and Judaism that a person who doesn't yearn for this and doesn't think about it, it's like they're missing a relationship with Hashem. Again, this is not a call for everybody to throw caution to the wind and immediately uproot their lives. That's not what we do. But it's not all or nothing. That's not okay. So that's how Moshe handled this. Now I want to share with you some beautiful ideas on this. One really clear approach from the Talmud Rebbe of Yerushalayim, where he says the following. When it says, Vayomru b'nei Gad u'b'nei Reuven el Moshe, Lemor. Vayomer b'nei Gad. It ought to say, Vayomru, and they said, the children of God said to Moshe. But it says, and he said. Moshe, so Rashi says, Kulam ki'ish echad. The entire group of Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven said this as if they were one man. Now, what does that remind you of? At the giving of the Torah, it says the Jewish people were ki'ish echad, belev echad, like one person. They all said Nasav and Ishma with one heart. Right? They all stood there at the mountain. They encamped at the mountain, and they were like one person with one heart. And when Paro, it says the Egyptians were chasing the Jewish people, Paro hikriv, and they saw Mitzrayim chasing after them in the singular. They saw the whole Egypt, a huge number of Egyptians chasing after them on the way to the Red Sea. And Rashi says, Belev echad, ki'ish echad, with one focus, like one person. But here, it just said, ki'ish echad. The two other places in Chumash, where Rashi describes a whole group of people working together, was the Egyptians in their frantic last-ditch attempt to destroy the Jewish people, and the Jewish people standing at Har Sinai. And in both of them, it says Ke'ish Echad, B'Lev Echad, or B'Lev Echad, Ke'ish Echad, which is another conversation why those are reversed, something to think about. But why here does it leave out the business of B'Lev Echad? And it just says the children of Gad and Reuven spoke Ke'ish Echad, like one man. Okay, so he says something interesting from the Alshich. Moshe Alshich was in the late 1500s in Tzfas, and he writes the following: B'nai Gad lo chilku kavod el b'nai Reuven habechor. The children of God made a mistake. Reuven is a prestigious tribe. He was the oldest of Yaakov Avinu's sons, and it was appropriate among the Jewish people that if there was a delegation, if something was going on, the people from Reuven would present first, because it was prestigious. You give honor to the Bechor. And they did not. B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven. So that's why when Moshe first addresses, when the Torah first talks about them, it talks about the children of Reuven and the children of Gad. The minute they approach, it has Gad before Reuven, and that's how it continues on. So there we talk about the T'nai, B'nai Gad, and B'nai Reuven. All throughout the Gemara, we talk about the conditions and the deal that the children of Gad and Reuven made. Suddenly, Gad is first, even though it was right, and that's why. Hagam shetzad hashava shebahem. He says, let me explain why. If you look carefully at the Psukim, says the Alshich, even though what they had in common is they both had a lot of livestock, they were not similar at all. Gad was much wealthier. Gad haya kaved me'od m'lekin Reuven. And he proves it from the verses. Otzu me'od. Gad had much, much, much more than Reuven. They were much wealthier. And therefore, they came first in their demands because they were even more driven than the people from the tribe of Reuven. So they took the lead here and they just spoke up first. Between the two tribes, explains the Talmud Rebbe, they weren't necessarily treating one another in the way you would expect two brotherly tribes to treat one another, where you give respect where respect is due. The children of God were focused on their own livestock. They were wealthy and they needed to deal with their financial issue. The people of Reuven also had the same issue. But it's not that they were one. If they were Ke'ish Echad, they were speaking like one person, but not B'Lev Echad. They didn't have the same desires. This person was thinking for himself, and that one was thinking for himself, and they happened to line up. When the Jewish people stood at Har Sinai, it's not that they happened to line up. It was that they all felt for each other. There was a v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. I want to explain what this means in a real relationship. People who love each other, so then what matters to you matters to me. It's not an inconvenience for me. What matters to you matters to me. That's what happens when people love each other. And therefore, if I want to go to one place for vacation and my wife wants to go to the other place for vacation, so then I'm not trying to get my way. I have two needs now. I want to be happy. That's fair. And I want her to be happy. These are two conflicting needs that I have to work out. Now, I always like to say that the worst thing anyone can ever do in a marriage or any relationship that they really value, the worst thing they can do is to compromise. Never compromise. So one reason I say that is to get people to look at me like, but I heard the opposite on both Dr. Phil and the final thoughts of 3 Jerry Springers. So I don't understand what you're right. People say compromise. And the truth is, I'm just saying it to get attention, but I want people to remember this idea that if you need to go out for dinner, and I don't know, you're in Manhattan, right? And you have the company credit card, and you need to go eat something. And you have the choice of La Marée, or I don't know, Prime, right? I mean, you put whatever you want, right? Prime cut, is that what they call it? Reserve cut. There's something there, Mike's Bistro, a nice place where you spend a few $100s on get a couple steaks and a l'chaim, sit by yourself like a real. You're either the biggest loser in the world or you're a tycoon, by the way. If you see a guy sitting by himself in the restaurant, right, it's one of the two. He'll never, right? So I always tell myself I'm the latter, but I'm happy to eat by myself. But so I'm right. Which one do you go to? So a person who feels like they have to compromise, you pick what's best for you. You pick one. Yes, everything comes at the expense of something else. If you've got 2 children and you think, what can I do with them on a Sunday? 2 or more, right? And you say, well, this one's older, she would like that, but this one's younger and he would like that. And you pick something that you think is best for your family. Is that a compromise? It's the best possible decision for me. Now, you could give up, like they say. Rabbi Israeli told me that there was a family with 8 children in Lakewood, and they gave up one for adoption because when they were going matching for shopping clothes for Yom Tif, matching clothes and shopping for these clothes, so they could only find 7 matching dresses. So they gave one of their kids up for adopt. Okay, it's a joke, but right? The idea is you could do that. Yeah, right. Like it's that important to have everyone matching, right? Right. And I thought it was very funny when he told it to me, but you have to know the culture a little. So I'm like telling the joke. You look at fish in a bowl, like they did. They gave, but yeah. But in other words, that's the idea. Like you could get divorced, and then you can go to your parents every Yom Tif, and she can go to her parents every Yom Tif. But I don't want to get divorced. We love each. Okay. So then it's not enough. So you have 2 children. So now you have to figure out what's the right place to think about. This one doesn't really like pizza, so where are we going to go? We're going to go for yeah. You understand? In other words, that's how life is. That if you see it as it's me against you and I have to compromise, so then you're losing. Everyone loses when you compromise. We say, listen, we're married and we want to be married. So we can't go every time to the same place because I like some things, you like some other things. So this year we'll go to my parents, next year we'll go to your parents, whatever it is, right? So then that's wonderful. Like that's the best possible choice for us. And it wasn't a compromise because compromising would mean really it'd be better if I was single. Right? And that's not what the person thinks. They don't want that. So in reality, do you follow this? In other words, what matters to you matters to me. That's belev echad. Ki ish echad belev echad means we want the same things. I want you to be happy, and you want me to be happy. And so we're going to sit down and figure out what's the best way for that to work. When people always feel like they're losing out because someone else is getting what they want, so it's not necessarily love. It's we both got along very well when we were dating because I selfishly wanted a girlfriend, you wanted a boyfriend, so it happened to work out. But the minute there's something else that's not immediately meeting both, we both like Chinese food, great, but what if you really like it and I don't? What if I like this music and you don't? So what do we do? And that's just, I love you enough to want you to have the food you like and to want you to hear the music and that's a very, very important skill to train yourself in, to realize it's not compromise. I'm not losing. I chose this, and I want this. Okay, so that's what's happening here. That's just seeing the difference between ke'ish echad belev echad or ke'ish echad, when there is no belev echad, when there isn't one unified ratzon and desire. And therefore, you didn't see the respect between the two of them. And the Midrash actually says that Bnei Reuven and Bnei Gad, Hashem said to them, Atem chibavtem es miknechem yosem min hanafashos. They spoke to Moshe, and they said, we have a lot of money and our children. And Moshe spoke back to them and said, your children and your money. You cared more about money than anything, even than life, even than your family. And this is a problem that we always laugh at other people who do this, but everybody can do this. Everybody can do this. Everybody can put business or finances or something else before the well-being of their children. There are people, you're not going to believe this, but there are people who won't even have the children to come to the world at all because of financial considerations. I mean, if there's anything, that's by far worse than just missing the kids' recital. You brought them to the world, you fed them, you clothed them, and you missed a lot of stuff for business. It's terrible. Even worse is you didn't even let them come to the world. That's the Torah's attitude. And not everyone has that attitude. But that's what Torah says in many places. So, Atem chibavtem es miknech yosem min hanafashos. There's not going to be any bracha in this. It's not going to happen. It's not so good for you. The Medrash is teaching that behalas hamamon shibsha es yishuv hadas. When a person is really thinking about finances, they're really thinking about money, it skews their way of thinking. When a person is in that state, and they wound up making choices that were more financially beneficial than their wives or their children. It was better for money, and they sacrificed the well-being of wives and children. Someone told me today about a certain person who has in my opinion, very, very skewed religious values. And he told me that this person is just absolutely convinced that his way is the best way and that everyone else has got it wrong. That's what he told me. So I said to him, the power of the brain is such that if a person has aggressive cancer, there's something called the placebo effect. And in a significant percentage of cases, It's a real percentage, to the point that when they test medicine, they have to realize that large number of people, 15, 20, 20, a real percent of people will, their body will change because their brain becomes convinced that the sugar pill they're taking is a cure for cancer. So the power of the brain is such that it can convince an entire, right, an entire system of a person's body of something that will then change reality. So if somebody's making a couple dollars, right, somebody has a good job, you know that they can convince themselves that something false is true? People have a tremendous capacity to convince themselves totally that something that to all the rest of us is totally absurd is absolutely true and is right. And there's something in it for them, right? In this person's case, it's a lot of money. This was the case that I was dealing with today, is that the person, in this person's case, it's job related and other things. And they're just absolutely convinced that because of the financial considerations that, in my opinion, that must it likely contributes to it. A person who hundreds of thousands of dollars are on this side of the question suddenly starts to say, maybe it's not that bad of an idea to take that job. Maybe it's not that bad of an idea to move my children here or there. Maybe it's not that, you understand? Because when a person gets very caught up with money, our sages say, Adam bohul al mamono. People become irrational over money. Over financial matters, people become very irrational. People risk their lives. The Gemara says there are people, their finances are much more important to them than their life itself. And that's why in Shema, when you have B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, there are some people, it's just a kind of a person, right? It's that famous Jack Benny, the guy who holds him up at gunpoint, And I know Ira would for sure would finish the joke for me. But if someone holds him up at gunpoint in an alley and says, your money or your life, and it's a radio comedy, so it's just quiet. It's quiet for like 10 seconds. The guy says, well, because I'm thinking, right? That's the famous Jewish Jack Benny. That should be, so we have to make sure that our children and grandchildren know this one from the vaudeville radio days. So, Al tigala ha'ashir mebi nasra chadal, said Shlomo HaMelech. Don't work so hard to grow wealthy. And then his last word of the pasuk is mebi nascha, from your own insight, chadal, settle down, like back off a little bit. Now, of all people, he says, Shlomo HaMelech, who was the wisest of all men, everything is chachma and bina. And he's saying, mi binascha chadal, but he's saying, when you get into that place of really being shrewd at making money, you have to back off a little bit. Because if you get too carried away with using your wisdom to just grow rich all the time, it's always that, says the Ibn Ezra, then you'll never break out of it. You'll never break out of it. Like it says, Ohev kesef lo yisba kesef. Right? It says in Koheles, the person who loves silver or money will never ever get enough of it. Mepharshim say, a person really puts it into their heart that they're going to love, that they get real joy. That's their real pleasure. There's nothing that can satisfy them. It's not satisfiable because there's a part of, I want to explain this. This is really important to know about everything. It's important to know about whether it's sexuality, whether it's luxury. It's important to know that there's a part of our brain that convinces us over time, if you'll just have that, you'll be happy. And it creates some fantasy. So for one person, it's that they're going to get this fancy new car, or they're going to redo their kitchen, or they're going to go on a fancy vacation, right? But it applies in every area, that a person develops a fantasy, and they're just convinced, if I can just get this out of my system, then, and it's false. There will be another one, and will be another one. So our sages say, Ein Adam Meis. No person has ever left this world, has died, v'chatzi ta'avosov biyado, with even half of their desires achieved. It can't be done. Therefore, meaning the taiva, right? Their desire, these fantasies, you can't get it because it's not something that if you get it, now you have it and you can settle down. It works the opposite way. Your brain just creates a new one because it's a part of your brain. So realizing, and it's hard with our children. One of my daughters once earned some money. She wanted to buy a pair of shoes that was absurdly expensive. Right? In other words, it was $150 more than it should have been. And they're white. So how long are they going to last? So I told her I would split it with her if she promises to write one paragraph, right, about how she feels about the shoes right after she gets them, and one 5 months later. That's all I want. I want you to be able to look back and see how much you thought this was going to make you happy. And then I want you to tell me, did it really? That's all. Like, you're just going to sit down. You don't have to show it to me. You can just keep it for yourself. And I felt like that's an important thing for us to do. Like, to just learn the lesson so that the next time that there's something we want to spend a lot of money on that's out of our budget, is it going to do anything for us? I will tell you this one more observation, because we're going to get into what poverty is in a second. And poverty is absolutely terrible. Um, but I'll just tell you the following observation, that when it comes to finances, we'll see. Here's the language. Here's the language of Chazal, is that dikduke anios, the challenges of abject poverty, can pull a person away from themselves and from Hashem. Tikduke anios ma'avirin es adam al daito ve'al das kono. The challenge of poverty, real poverty, can pull a person away from their own self. They can lose their mind, and it can make them completely against the will of God. Poverty drives people to desperate states, and it doesn't really work. There's a story of Rabbi Yochanan in the Talmud Yerushalmi, which says, Avad le kusise, he lost his wallet. He lost a bunch of money. They started asking him questions in Torah, and he didn't know. The great Rav Yochanan, who's the Mare of the great from Talmud Yerushalmi, right? He wrote the Talmud Yerushalmi, and they asked him Torah questions, and he just couldn't answer. He didn't have the peace of mind to answer. And they said to him, because you lost your money, some money, you lost your mind? He says, yeah. Daita beliba talia. The mind depends on the heart, on what you want, on what you're thinking, on whether you're settled. Beliba bekisa talia. And the heart can depend on the wallet. A person who's dealing with poverty, with financial real insecurity, can make you lose your mind. So I'll tell you a very interesting thing. I've seen this, and we'll show you something from Chaim Palaji. I've seen over the years that it's something I talk about sometimes, because a lot of young couples in LA that we've dealt with are always trying to figure out, should they stay in LA? Should they go to Phoenix? Should they go somewhere like a little bit out of town where suddenly they can have a nice big house and a pool for the price of, a one bedroom or a studio here in LA, and it could change their lifestyle. And people really think about this a lot. And what happens is then I meet people who move, and I see them again. I say, so how is it? So some people are really happy, and some people are not happy, of course, because it depends where they went. But here's the people who are happy say this. They say, we love our school, we like our neighborhood, we like our friends, we like our shul, like our rabbi. These are things that people really talk about. Very, very rarely does anybody talk about the house or the swimming pool. I'm serious about this. Like, very rarely do they ever mention it. And the ones who don't like it are also saying, like, well, we don't like the house or something. It's all about, saying, like, it's all about these real quality of life things, because poverty is absolutely horrible. And if a person doesn't have what they need, and every month they think they're going to lose, they're going to get evicted, and they're in the supermarket trying to buy groceries, and they keep trying to put it on their last credit card, and it's like, I'm sorry, so then they have to put something back and try it again. It's very, very challenging. It's very difficult, and it's soul crushing. And you can't think about other things, and you can't learn, and you can't in your relationship. It's a really difficult thing. A person who has enough for what they need, and perhaps a little bit more, but they're making it. There's no relationship between that and billionaire in terms of a person's happiness. At that point, there's no relationship. It's going to have to do with friends and family and human relationships and 100 other things that are going on in a person's life, and it's just not connected. Poverty is really bad. It's really bad. The good news is that we know Ezehu Asher Hasamech Mechalko. You can have very wealthy people who feel very poor, and they feel insecure, and they don't know if the stock market goes the wrong way tomorrow, they could lose a fortune, and what's going to happen, and then they're going to be in foreclosure on all their properties, and therefore they sit around and they don't have peace of mind. And you can have very, very simple people who feel they have enough. There's a lot even with whatever hand you're dealt, that you can do to not feel poor and to not feel rich. But there's a story, Rabbi Immanuel Chai Riki, who lived in the 1600s, and he was captured. He writes about this in the introduction to his sefer Hon Ashir, which means like the wealth or the incredible fortune of the wealthy man. Hon Ashir, the fortune of the wealthy man. So he says, why did I name the book this? He says, because when he was in Israel, he was living in Tzfat, and he fled the country because of a plague. People were dying. I think some of his children may have died. It was a heartbreaking thing. And him and his wife and whatever it was, they fled the country. They got on a boat to just get out and go somewhere while there was this plague, this communicative disease. And they were captured by Tunisian pirates. From Tunisia, pirate ship came, boarded them, took them, and brought them to Tunisia to sell them as slaves. And he lost everything, but there was a wealthy Jewish man there who like managed to use his influence to get him and his wife and daughter away and move them into his house. I think his name was Eliyahu Silvera, and he named Svarim after him, and he thanked him. He then supported him there, and then when he went back, I think that was Eliyahu Silvera. Maybe that was someone that came later who helped him when he was living in Egypt. I don't know. I don't remember the exact story of who it was, but anyway, he got out of it. But what I do remember is that he says that that after all this experience, the only thing he was left with, they had brought a lot of their valuables and everything they had, they were moving, and the only thing he was left with was his sefer on the Mishnayos, and the sefer he wanted to call Dikduke Anius, the challenges of poverty. That was the name of the sefer. Now he says the reason he named it that is because it seems the sefer is filled with dikdukim, like very careful. It's like a play on words. Very careful look at the words of every Mishnah. Why does it say this? Why does it say that? And then he would build a whole idea about the whole thing. And Anios was like he was saying, I'm but a poor simple man, and these are my But the word sounds like he's complaining about poverty. And so he said, I decided that maybe this is why I was punished like this. It's because such a disrespect to the Torah to name a sefer that. So I'm naming it Hon Ashir, literally the opposite. This is the wealth I'm a wealthy man, and this is my fortune, my Torah, and that's the name of this. It's an interesting story. So that was Rabbi Immanuel Chai Riki, who was one of the great Kabbalists. Sefer Mishnah Chachamim, which sort of organized all the teachings of the Arizal into like an encyclopedia that's still studied to today is considered a very basic work. Okay, so Reb Chaim Palagi writes this. He wrote a book. This book is Yisamach Chaim. Yisamach Chaim, because his name is Chaim. He wrote, I think we have between 80 and 90 of his svarim. They all have the word Chaim in it somewhere. And then that's after his first 30 or 40 were burnt in a fire. He lost the manuscripts before they were ever printed. He started over. So Reb Chaim Palagi, Izmir, Turkey, 1780 to 1860 approximately, like in those decades. So he writes in the introduction here the following. He says, there's a pasuk that says, Lischok osim lechem, ve'yayin yisamach chayim, ve'hakesef ya'aneh et hakol. It means, bread brings laughter, wine brings joy to life, and money is the answer to everything. So the pasuk seems to be tongue-in-cheek, right? That's not really the truth. But he says, Kesef Yanet Hakol is to be understood in the following way. So the book is called Yisamach Chayim, which is from that pasuk. Money will answer everything. He says, what does it mean? He says he found in the Sefer Knesses Hagedolah, Reb Chaim Bian Vinisti, in the 1600s as a Sefer, and he quotes the Maharil. The Maharil was the great Ashkenazic codifier of all of our minhagim. He also, the Maharil, worth knowing about the Maharil, all of our tunes were like set by the Maharil. So, for example, right, the tunes that we do for Rosh Hashanah, or the Kiddush for Yantif, everything, all the things that we have. Baruch Hu es Hashem hamivorach, right? All the different tunes we have for different times of the year and different things. He was a chazan, and he established the tune for Birchas Kahanim. These different things are they go back for sure to the Maharil, and he was collecting and making sure that it was known. Here's what you do for this yantiv, here's what you do for that one, for Tal, for Geshem, and it's very established. I'm sure. I don't know with the Svardim if there was the same uniformity, because even among the Ashkenazim, the Germans really had. There are some different Birchas Kohanim tunes you've heard before, right? And so, among the Ashkenazim, though, he kind of pulled everything together at one point of the German, that whole thing. So he tells over Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam was Rashi's grandson. And Rabbeinu Tam, Haya Ashir, was incredibly wealthy. Rabbeinu Tam was very wealthy. He was attacked by crusaders, and they hit him in the head with an axe and nearly died. He did, it wasn't an easy life for any of these people, but he did make a lot of money, Rabbeinu Tam. And Kishaya Yoshev Lasok B'Torah, when he would sit to teach Torah with his students, Be'omka Shel Halacha, so when he was learning by himself or with his students, Haya Mesim Lefan of Kli Malei Zehuvim, he would bring out a bowl, like we have flowers in a bowl. He would, I don't know if those are real, right? He would bring out a bowl, probably a lot bigger, and fill it with gold coins. So that his heart should be open for learning Torah. Because when money's there, everything's okay. Yeah, that's what he says. And he says, so Chaim Pelagi said, that's why I named my book this. Yisamach Chaim. Because hakesef ya'anes hakol. Money answers everything. When Rabbi Yochanan didn't know how he was going to be financially secure, his mind wasn't clear, and he couldn't answer questions people asked him. But if you feel like you have kesef, if you feel like you have enough money, ya'anes hakol, you can answer everything. It's good for your memory. It's good for your mind. You remember things that's what he says, when you have financial security. And therefore, it's a very, very important thing. Yeah, it's very, very important. Children who do not have security in one way or another, they are terrible in school. Bruce Perry, they're terrible in school when they don't have security. Bruce Perry is like this top neuropsychologist, neuroscientist. He's really considered one of the great experts in the world. And he researched enormously about learning disabilities. And he tried to figure out what's going on. What are the common denominators? He went through everything, all the resource rooms, all throughout the country. And he decided at the end of all of his work, and you can read, you didn't get a summary of what does Bruce Perry say about these things. He said there's only two things that help. All the millions of dollars an hour that are being poured in around the country to this problem, there's only two things that help meaningfully. One is teaching parents to have a good, stable, healthy home, good shalom bayis, not to be arguing and fighting and have turmoil in relationships. Children who come from homes like that, they're able to learn and remember. That's number one. He said, and the second thing is, since you won't be able to reach all those people, he found that big brother and big sister programs, where they would find somebody else who could be a rock and they could trust and they could connect to. Those are the two things they should be investing all that money in, he recommends. Take most of it out of these resource rooms and use it for those things, and you'll solve the problem. He explains, because the cortex of the brain, the cortex, is the part that deals with new information. However, when new information is coming into a person whose brain was raised in a war-torn society, and they never knew if the next bomb is going to hit them and wipe them out, and what hovel are they going to sleep in that night. So they're very fearful, and they're very scared, and even new information is a threat to them. It's difficult. It's changing the way things are going, and it's not easy for them, and you have to recalculate everything, and so they fight it off. That's what he says. The cortex develops differently, abnormally, in people that come from, similar to the turmoil that comes from being in a war-torn society and the traumas of running for your life and seeing, right? I don't know if you've ever seen these videos, right, of the people running in Israel. And you'll see a little boy saying, Ani lo רוצה למות, right? A little boy saying, I don't want to die. And the mother's like covering him in the street saying, don't worry, baby, it's going to be okay. Don't worry, honey. You understand? So what does that do to a kid? So the answer is, it's even worse when in the home there's fighting and they don't know, are my parents going to get divorced? So financial insecurity is not parents fighting a lot about money and about, are we going to be starving, or what's going to be with our family, right? That's, children report this. They said the parents were arguing about money. They didn't realize, but someone told me this not long ago, that when she was a little girl, that she really thought, are we going to all starve and die? To her, we're out of money didn't mean credit card debt with high, right, that eventually declare bankruptcy. It meant maybe some of the people in our family are going to die of starvation. This little girl told me as an adult that she still remembers this and being petrified. She has a nice life. She's a good person. But that's a strong thing. When that's consistent and regular, it's very damaging. So says Bruce Perry exactly this. And by the way, it's a big secret in education. You understand? It's a big thing. That if you can have a place where people feel valued and appreciated and loved and it's healthy, they can learn. Now that's a lot to do because the school is not an orphanage. Instead, the school is you don't have them all day, and you don't have, but that's a tremendous, it's a tremendous thing to understand. And there's a Gemara that says this. The Gemara says if you see a student who is a Gemara in Tainus, you see a student who's having a very hard time learning, so it's the fault of his rabbi who's not masbir lo panim, who's not smiling at him. That's a problem. His teacher should be smiling at him, or should be more warm, because that's a very necessary thing. When a person has that, so then they're able to absorb their learning. So liba bekisa talia, what's going on in a person's wallet really changes their mind. It changes their thoughts. It has a big deal. The children of Gad and Reuven. So he says. So says a Talmud Rebbe, who's one of the great educators in Israel. So his conclusion is, first of all, young people need to learn. He says they need to learn. He says if you've got children, especially we're raising people in Southern California, as children, there is a constant message that life is about money. And he says, Hador Hatzair mishtokek v'cholem al osher. This is what they're thinking about. They're thinking about wealth. They're thinking about money. Their friends are going to show up to high school in brand new Teslas, right? And above. That's going to happen. He sees, Kesef Yana Hakol, it's answered everything. So he says, after all, it can give you a lot. It can give you prestige. It can give you a lot of things. So he says, what are we going to do for our kids? He says, we have to show them in a gentle and nice way at every opportunity that money and wealth are good because of what you can do with them, but they have no value independently. There's nothing to being wealthy. It's wonderful to give tzedakah. It's wonderful to have guests. It's wonderful to take care of your family. All those things are tremendous values, and that should be taught, but it should not be seen. And we have to make sure to show, because people lose their mind otherwise. Your mind can be completely taken over by finances. So what we see here is like this. The children of Gad and the children of Reuven are blamed on their level, whatever it was, for being too focused on the financial. Too focused on that, and it caused them to forget their wives, to forget their children, to forget everything. And Moshe was very alarmed by this. And perhaps we can see from the idea of him giving them the children of Menashe, giving them the Talmidei Chachamim in their midst. In other words, you can have all the wealth in the world. That's not bad. It's the greatest thing. It's the most wonderful thing. We want for everybody to have as much as they need and more, so that they can be peaceful. They can learn because you know why? If you have the money, Rabbeinu Tam showed his family and his students, right, and future generations. You know why the money is such a blessing? Because I can sit and learn Torah without any worry, with this bowl of gold coins. It wasn't so he could buy art. There was no other purpose. It was only for the Torah. It was only for the real values. And therefore, if you have the Reuven and the Gad directed by Moshe, he says, you know what you're going to do? You're going to fight alongside the Jewish people. You're going to be part of this nation. You're going to have among you many Torah scholars. This is going to be a strong place of Torah. It's going to be, and you'll be financially successful. Fantastic. I'm all for that in the right context, in the right place. So this is a very, very important thing for us to consider. We have to make sure that the way that we handle these financial things around young people, around children, it's very important that they should have a sense of security, of that everything is okay, that they're not worried about this sort of a thing. But additionally, they also have to learn what the Talmud Rebbe is saying. They need to learn from us in productive ways that we don't respect people who are wealthy for the sake of wealth. We respect the person who, with whatever they have, is generous and kind and giving and good. That is the great achievement that we see with the financial. And when a person can do that properly, what happens is even Chutz La'aretz becomes annexed to Eretz Yisrael. Even the parts of the world that don't seem to be Kedusha, when they're focused on Eretz Yisrael, when they're focused on Torah, so then they can be used tremendously to benefit Kedusha. And that is our greatest responsibility. So specifically at a time of year like this, when we are in Galus and we're focused, we're supposed to be spending a few weeks now, between Shavuos B'Tammuz and Tishrei, is a time that just is to focus on the fact that we are in exile. And we feel it. We feel it in the world. It's not a friendly world to us in the way that it would be when we're at home, in the land of Israel. So to recognize that it's our responsibility to think about that and to dream about that and to try to bring that home to ourselves and to our families and make sure we're talking about it and we're thinking about it and we're pulling up on our phone. You can, at any moment, you can watch live at the Kotel. Like, let's show it to our kids. Let's think about it. Let's look at it ourselves. Let's pay attention a little bit during this time and not forget that we're not kavua here. We haven't gone a day in the last few thousand years without praying and focusing on Yerushalayim, and that's where our hearts are. Just like the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven may have made that mistake for a moment or two, but Moshe Rabbeinu got them back on track and said, you're going to dedicate yourselves to settling the land of Israel. You're going to dedicate yourselves to Torah. So we must do the same. Yeshakach. It's on YouTube.